Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Let's get started. Our top story tonight on Gravitas is about what's happening in Syria. The country is being targeted by three powers: America, Israel and Turkiye. And as the chaos unfolds, we decode the power plays and tell you why these moves are being made and what lies at stake for them and for the region. Here's a look at what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. We tell you all about a dangerous double game being played by China with Russia. How desperate is the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky for peace? What's the latest from the battlefield? We get you the complete story in just a bit. As Myanmar's rebel group claims to have taken control of Myanmar's border with Bangladesh, we tell you what this means for the regional dynamics. All this and more coming up. Our top story tonight on Gravitas is about Syria. Bashar Al-Assad is gone and Syria has suddenly become the principal battlefield. It is being targeted by three powers: America, Israel and Turkey. But what's really driving these moves and who at the end of the day stands to gain from all of this? Tonight, we break down the major power plays and the agendas triggering actions that could shape Syria's future. A country already battered by more than a decade of civil war that now finds itself at the epicenter of fresh turmoil. The sudden collapse of Bashar al-Assad's regime has triggered a whirlwind of chaos as the United States, Israel and Turkey unleash firepower across Syrian territory. Let's start off with the situation on the ground. You see, Assad's regime has crumbled. He has fled to Moscow. On the ground in Syria, several Islamist rebel groups have emerged, with the rebel group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, emerging as a dominant force. While rebels can consolidate their hold, various countries have moved to swiftly secure their interests. The United States launched strikes against Islamic State targets in central Syria, while Turkey opened fire on US-backed Kurdish forces. Meanwhile, Israel targeted military installations across Syria. And let's not mistake these actions for anything else. These are calculated moves in a deadly game of influence and control. Let's just break it down for you. The United States, through its Central Command, has said that it struck over 75 sites targeting ISIL leaders, operatives and camps. On the surface, this looks like a mission to prevent the resurgence of ISIS in the wake of Assad's fall. But dig deeper, and experts say you will notice a familiar pattern. America's strikes are about asserting dominance in a region where its influence has waned in recent years. Using advanced warplanes like the B-52 Stratofortress and F-15 Eagle, Washington is making its moves. However, America faces a tricky balancing act, extremely tricky. Its key allies in the fight against ISIS are the Kurdish Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF. But the thing is, Turkiye, another US ally, views the same Kurdish forces as enemies. It is opposed to Kurds and blames it for causing insurgency in Turkey and labels SDF as a terrorist group. The Kurds, who control large parts of northeastern Syria, are reportedly crucial to Washington's strategy. In fact, the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan reportedly said that the country will not allow the Kurdish PKK or ISIS to gain from Syria's upheaval. Backed by the Turkish military, the Syrian National Army reportedly launched ground assaults on Kurdish forces in Manbij, Aleppo province. As per reports, these assaults were also supported by Turkish drones and warplanes that left at least 20 Kurdish fighters dead and 40 injured. Ankara insists its operations are defensive and aimed at neutralizing terrorist threats. Now, Erdogan's rhetoric, claiming Turkey has no interest in Syrian territory, does not quite align with the reality on the ground. You see, with nearly 3 million Syrian refugees in Turkey, Ankara has vested interest in shaping Syria's future, not just to address its refugee crisis, but also to expand its regional clout. And like we told you yesterday on Gravitas, Israeli forces entered the buffer zone in the Golan Heights, targeting former Syrian military sites. Israeli warplanes have reportedly continued to bomb key locations associated with missile and chemical weapons production. The Britain-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights War Monitor has said on Tuesday that Israel had destroyed a large number of military sites in Syria, with about 250 airstrikes since the fall of the Assad regime. The strikes targeted airports and warehouses, aircraft squadrons, radars, military signal stations, multiple weapons and ammunition depots over the past 48 hours. As per reports, Israeli planes bombed at least 3 major Syrian army air bases that housed dozens of helicopters and jets. The strikes hit the Kamishli air base in northeast Syria, the Shinshar base in Homs, and the Aqaba airport southwest of Damascus. As you can see in this video, several explosions and heavy smoke billowing after Israeli strikes targeted the ammunition and arms depot of the Syrian army near Kamishli. As per reports, Israeli military also carried out multiple strikes on Damascus. And like we said yesterday, Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar justified strikes in Syria as necessary to prevent Syria's advanced weaponry from falling into the wrong hands. But by destroying over 250 military sites since Assad's fall, is Israel just neutralizing threats? Or is this aggressive stance a warning to Iran and Hezbollah, longtime players in Syria's proxy wars? Both Iran and Russia, meanwhile, Assad's strongest allies, are reportedly scrambling to maintain their foothold in a rapidly changing landscape. Tehran, keen to preserve its corridor to Hezbollah in Lebanon via Syria, has reportedly opened dialogue with the new rebel leadership. Iran's message was clear that it wanted to avoid hostility and retain influence. But with its proxy network under threat, can Iran truly pivot without losing ground? Meanwhile, Moscow's key military bases in Syria, including the Tartus naval base and Khmeim air base, are critical to its global ambitions. As per reports, Moscow is seeking to secure the future of its military bases in Syria and has reached out to the country's new rebel leadership. The Kremlin spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, reportedly told reporters that the Russian authorities were taking all necessary steps to establish contact in Syria to ensure the security of its military bases. Russian state media stating that the Syrian opposition leaders had agreed to guarantee the safety of Russian military bases and diplomatic institutions in Syria. You see, the two bases have a lot of importance for Russia. The naval base in the Mediterranean gives Russia access to a warm water port, while Moscow has used the Khmeim air base as a post for its operations across northern Africa. And even as alliances shift, Syria's future remains uncertain. The US, Israel, Turkiye, Russia, Iran are all vying for a slice of a fractured Syria. Syria has become a battleground not just for territorial control, but a major power play for West Asia. The moves made today may just shape the lives of millions and redefine the region's geopolitical landscape. What happens next is anyone's guess. Each move matters, and for now, the bombs keep falling while the power plays continue. While the world is closely watching the chaos and the power plays unfold in Syria, it seems like China is quietly escalating its maritime aggression against Taiwan. Taiwan's defense ministry on Tuesday said that China has deployed its largest fleet of naval and coast guard vessels in nearly 3 decades. Close to 90 ships now crowd the waters, stretching from southern Japanese islands to the South China Sea. You see, this is not just military posturing. It is a calculated show of aggression aimed at Taiwan, its allies, and the broader Indo-Pacific region. China's naval operations are reportedly sending out a clear signal that Taiwan can be isolated and American allies like Japan and the Philippines can be blocked from coming to its defense. Lieutenant General Hesse Ji-sheng, a senior official in Taiwan's Ministry of Defense, told reporters in the capital Taipei on Tuesday that China has extended the military strength outward.
The Chinese Navy and Air Force's drills in this area, indeed, we have seen numbers becoming increasingly obvious, particularly in the airspace between north of Taiwan and east of Zhejiang. Over the past day, as mentioned in today's press release, approximately 47 aircraft have been active in that region.
Sun Lifang, a spokesman for Taiwan's defense ministry, meanwhile said the maritime operations were the largest that Taiwan has seen since 1996.
Comparing with the previous 4 drills, this time's deployment is the largest. The large scale mainly refers to sea deployment, not just the number of warships and vessels, but the scale and how they deploy.
As per reports, Taiwan remains on high alert in response to the Chinese ships, many of which were in waters of Taiwan's southwest, east and northwest coasts. So far, there have been no official announcements from China regarding the matter, while a Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman on Tuesday deflected the question. So why now? You see, the timing is no accident, not at all. As per reports, Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te recently visited Hawaii and Guam on the way to the Pacific Islands. His visit to Guam included a phone call with the U.S. House Speaker, Mike Johnson. And this exchange reportedly drew condemnation in Beijing, which staunchly opposes formal ties between Taiwan and countries like the United States. China claims Taiwan as its territory, remember, and sees such interactions as a direct challenge to its authority. The massive deployment by China reportedly is part of a broader strategy. Beijing wants to project power, intimidate Taiwan, and warn Washington to tread carefully. Taiwan said that it detected nearly 90 ships across the border region, 2/3 of which were naval, while officials from the defense ministry said that they had also detected 47 Chinese warplanes and 12 Chinese naval ships close to the island. For how long has this operation been in the making? Taiwanese officials estimate that China spent over 2 months amassing the ships and personnel for this mission. And you see, this is not the first time China has ramped up military pressure on Taiwan. In fact, it is becoming routine. Since President Lai's inauguration in May, China has staged 2 major military exercises around the island. These war games simulate an encirclement of Taiwan, a rehearsal for an actual blockade or invasion in a way. But this latest operation stands out for its sheer scale. Remember, China's President Xi Jinping has made it clear that reunification with Taiwan is inevitable, and if diplomacy does not work, Beijing will not hesitate in using force. So this is not just political rhetoric. China's actions are perhaps a roadmap for further action, a precursor to something far more sinister. The Taiwan Relations Act of 1979 obligates America to ensure Taiwan can defend itself, but will that really be enough? The clock is ticking and China's aggression is growing bolder by the day. While the crisis in Syria dominates headlines and the West in a way looks elsewhere, China seems to be quietly making the most of all of this, pushing its way towards Taiwan and attempting to redraw the map of the Indo-Pacific. Meanwhile, here's what else China is up to. It is reportedly playing a dangerous double game with Russia, especially in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, and its moves are raising eyebrows and a lot of questions. Here's what's going on. According to reports, Chinese manufacturers have started restricting sales of key components used in drones. These parts are vital for building unmanned aerial vehicles, and they are reportedly cutting off supplies to the US and Europe. But here's the twist. China is reportedly selling drones to both Ukraine and Russia. Yes, you heard that right. China is supplying both sides in this nearly 3-year-long war. How is that possible? As per reports, China recently began limiting sales to the US and Europe of components used to build unmanned aerial vehicles. And who is using these unmanned aerial vehicles? Ukraine. That too reportedly for its defensive and combat operations against Russia. Now, back in July, there were reports that Chinese companies were helping Russia develop attack drones. Now, due to the strong ties between China and Russia, this seemed like a usual development. But the fact that China was also supplying drones to Ukraine, even if not directly, shows the double game it is dangerously playing with Russia. As we just mentioned, China and Russia have close ties. Well, at least that's what it seems like. This year alone, Chinese President Xi Jinping and the Russian President Vladimir Putin have held 3 bilateral meetings. The two militaries also conducted several joint exercises in different parts of the world this year. But actions always speak louder than words. China's double game is clear, publicly showing support for Russia while in a way fueling both sides of the war. The question remains, for how long can Beijing carry out this double game? As the year draws to a close and winter sets in, Russian forces are continuing to push their Ukrainian opponents back. Our next report tells you more about how Moscow is deploying heavy firepower in the battlefield as Kiev continues to vouch for diplomacy as the only way to end the war.
Winter deepens and so does the ferocity of the battlefield. Russian forces are advancing with heavy firepower, pushing Ukrainian defenders further back. Bombarded with relentless missile strikes and drone swarms, Ukraine struggles to hold its lines. Moscow continues to unleash glide bombs to devastating effect. Iranian-made Shahid drones and ballistic missiles are creating chaos across the front lines. Russian forces are methodically targeting critical Ukrainian military infrastructure, striking airfields with calculated precision. Ukrainian troops, exhausted after nearly 3 years of grueling combat, find themselves pushed back by an overwhelming onslaught of Russian military might.
For me, I'm in a grief. I've had people died, so for right now I'm in a grief, and it's hard as to be a commander and tell their families and I don't know, and thinking about what could have been done to just for these people not to die. And
after the First World War, we were abandoned by Europe again, just like we are being abandoned now. And we will be under Russia, because now it doesn't matter if Trump is the president or not. They'll make a deal with Russia again. We'll be absorbed. NATO doesn't want us, and no one wants to sign any specific security agreement with us.
President Volodymyr Zelensky confronts a rapidly deteriorating situation, desperately seeking a diplomatic resolution. His latest proposal involves potentially deploying foreign troops to secure Ukraine's territorial integrity and pave the way for NATO membership.
We talked about the frozen conflict, Ed, in recent meeting with Trump and Macron. I said that we want the war to end more than anyone else in the world. Certainly, a diplomatic end to the war will bring more lives saved, and we want that.
The potential return of Donald Trump to the presidency sends tremors through Ukraine's strategic calculations. Trump's previous warnings about reducing military aid and potentially withdrawing from NATO have heightened Ukraine's existential anxiety. Experts fear these threats could fundamentally alter the conflict's dynamics, potentially forcing Kiev into a compromising, negotiating position. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Our next story comes from Myanmar but has far-reaching implications for the region. The Arakan army has claimed the capture of the last army outpost in the strategic western town of Mongdo. You know what that means? That it gains full control of the border with Bangladesh. Just for context here, the Arakan army is one of the most powerful ethnic minority armed groups battling Myanmar's army. Imagine full control of the 271-kilometer long border with Bangladesh. That's around 168 miles. But the thing is, it's not as simple as that. The situation in Mongdo cannot be independently confirmed, with access to the internet and mobile phone services in the area mostly cut off. So a lot could be unknown at this point. The claim would also mean that the group's control of the northern part of Rakhine State would be complete. And that, in turn, marks another advance in its bid for self-rule there. That is how crucial these developments are. And how important is Rakhine, you ask? Well, extremely. You see, Rakhine has become a focal point for Myanmar's nationwide civil war, with pro-democracy guerrillas and ethnic minority armed groups seeking autonomy, battling the country's military rulers. Remember, the military rulers took power in 2021 after the army ousted the elected government of Aung San Suu Kyi. Like we said, the Arakan army has claimed the capture of the last army outpost in the strategic western town of Mongdo. Let's just pull out this map for you. Mongdo is around 400 kilometers, that's 250 miles southwest of Mandalay, Myanmar's second largest city, and has been the target of an Arakan army offensive since the month of June. In fact, the group captured Paletwa and Butidong, two other towns on the border with Bangladesh, earlier this year. Basically, since November 2023, The Arakan army has gained control of 11 of Rakhine's 17 townships, along with one in neighboring Chin state. On Sunday, the Arakan army said it had ordered the suspension of transport across the Naf River because police and local Muslims affiliated with the army were allegedly attempting to escape by boat to Bangladesh. Let's now talk about what's happening in Haiti. On Monday, the UN Human Rights Chief reported that at least 184 people were killed in gang violence in the country's capital over the weekend, in what is now being reported as an orchestrated attack against voodoo practitioners by a powerful gang leader. According to Haiti-based Group Committee for Peace and Development, or CPD, and United Nations, the massacre took place in the capital's western coastal neighborhood. On Monday, the Haiti government condemned the incident by calling it a massacre of unbearable cruelty. Not just that, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres also recently condemned the ongoing violence in Haiti. But what really happened? According to reports, gang members forcibly seized residents over the age of 60 from their homes and killed them rather brutally. But why was this specific age group targeted? In a statement, the Haiti-based group CPD said that the gang leader decided to punish all the elderly people and voodoo practitioners who he imagines would be capable of casting a bad spell or performed witchcraft on his son. The group also said that the gang soldiers were responsible for identifying these victims and taking them to the chief's stronghold to be executed. Voodoo has become a mainstay of Haiti's culture. It was banned during French colonial rule and recognized as an official religion by the government in 2003. But have only the old been targeted in these attacks? Why is that? According to the CPD, even as most victims of violence aged over 60, some young people who tried to rescue others were also among the casualties. A leading Haitian human rights group described the killings as a result of a personal vendetta of a gang boss who got convinced that his son's illness was caused by followers of the voodoo religion. Meanwhile, there are angry reactions coming in from on the ground.
Un criminel ou petit ou malazon gang ou vous dit c'est moun nan zone k'ap manger vous tuer ça combien moun ça est fanal pas gen bagay pour bagay yo te do seke même côté te do seke la police te do seke zone nan pour je malfecter ça et kounya après on gang a vinn demander pardon qui pardon gang devant la société ya non nous pas d'accord nous un pays nous même qui veut marquer mes âmes il y a petit m'a plevé il y a petit qui finit l'école.
You see, gang violence has been rampant in the country for a while now, and reports suggest gangs control 80% of the capital city, despite a Kenyan-led police support mission, which is further backed by the US and the UN. Violence has continued to soar. In fact, according to the UN Human Rights Office, gang-related violence has caused nearly 4,000 deaths in 2024. Switching focus for now, after a rapid rally this year, a slowdown in the US big tech growth is weighing on investor sentiment. The real question remains, is the global stock market's growth engine running on fumes? Our next report takes a closer look at the outlook for next year.
For a long time, investors have put their faith in the largest tech firms to drive stock market growth. That is largely thanks to their robust earnings and projections for even greater future revenues. This has lately been boosted by the creation of artificial intelligence services. For the time being, it seems like those days are in the past. As the current stock market boom approaches its third year, it is compelling investors to find new methods to profit. Returns are at the heart of the matter. Bloomberg Intelligence reports that the so-called Magnificent Seven, or the 7 largest technology companies in the world, including Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, Meta Platforms, Microsoft, Nvidia, and Tesla, are anticipated to report a combined earnings increase of 18% in 2025. and that is down from a projected 34% in 2024. After excluding Nvidia, which has been the most benefited from Wall Street's obsession with AI, the remaining companies are projected to report a pitiful 3% rise in profits in 2025. Any industry would be pleased to hear of an 18% profit growth, but not for big tech. If the prediction pans out, the high-flying category will have full-year profit growth that is not much higher than that of the materials and industrial categories and somewhat lower than healthcare. Also from 10% this year, profit growth for the S&P 500 index is expected to reach 13% in 2025. And that means tech companies aren't exactly leading the way for the rest of the corporate America anymore. Julian McManus, portfolio manager at Janus Henderson, told Bloomberg the Mac 7 is not necessarily going to be the engine of growth for the market that it has been for the last year or so. That narrative is already playing out. A Bank of America report using data from EPFR Global stated that the tech group had its worst outflow in 6 weeks of $1.4 billion in the December 4 week. On the contrary, inflows into the small cap stocks of $4.6 billion for that week brought the total to above $30 billion, setting a new yearly record. Broadly, small caps have lagged the market as a whole this year. The valuation is the biggest concern for the big tech firms. The S&P 500 index as a whole also witnessed a market value surge. However, when compared to the values of big giants, it is about half the price. Wall Street has, of course, previously failed to fully appreciate the power of big tech. Analysts had predicted a 19% increase in their earnings at the beginning of 2024, but the group is now expected to see a 34% gain. Business Bureau Report, WION The World.
The murder of a health insurance CEO in the United States continues to make waves, and there seems to have been a major breakthrough in the case. Authorities have now identified a suspect. The details regarding this young man will shock you and make you wonder why he committed the crime. 26-year-old Luigi Mangione came into the spotlight after the police revealed he is their person of interest in the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Thompson was murdered last week on the streets of Manhattan in broad daylight. The incident that has gripped not just America, but the rest of the world, has more shocking details. Mangione was a graduate from a private Ivy League university. He belongs to a wealthy family. He also has an active social media presence, reportedly. The case has laid deep frustration and anger with America's privatized medical system. But how exactly did the police find him? Reports revealing that a McDonald's worker tipped the police, and that is how the authorities got to him. The news of Mangione's capture in Pennsylvania has sparked a wave of online activity. He quickly gained a surge of followers on social media as both citizen sleuths and US media tried to understand who he really is. While some hailed him as a hero and mourned his arrest, others analyzed his intellectual posts for ideological clues. In fact, according to Mangione's LinkedIn profile, he is employed as a data engineer at a California-based online auto marketplace. However, a company spokesperson told AFP that Mangione has not been an employee of the company since 2023. A standout student, Mangione graduated as a valedictorian from his high school in 2016, where he praised his teachers for encouraging intellectual curiosity beyond grades. He continued his academic success at the University of Pennsylvania, where he earned both a bachelor's and a master's degree in computer science by 2020. Mangione is now in police custody, but when he was arrested, the police found a 3D printed gun in his possession. It's called the Ghost Gun. But what kind of a weapon is it, and how exactly did he obtain it? Ghost guns are usually sold as do-it-yourself or DIY kits, which basically means one can buy parts of the gun separately and assemble it at home. One can easily build or buy such guns without background checks or registration. Such guns lack serial numbers, thereby making them difficult to be traced. Hence the name Ghost Gun. What's even more alarming here is the fact that these guns can be built using a 3D printer, combining 3D printed frames with traditional metal components like springs and tubing. According to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives, commonly known as ATF, the average cost of building a ghost gun can be as low as $500. The use of ghost guns is not new though. These weapons have been involved in several high-profile shootings, including a school shooting in Santa Clarita in 2019 and the deadly 2017 shooting spree in California that claimed the lives of 5 people. The unregulated nature of these guns making them a serious problem for law enforcement. One can even find 3D printed guns or ghost guns on the internet. Social media platforms like Telegram, X, Facebook have long been accused of not having proper regulations in place to stop illegal firearm sales. Several countries are demanding that big tech companies take responsibility and prevent illegal weapon sales on their sites. And this raises several serious questions regarding traceability of the firearm. But amid all of these details emerging, the questions, there are larger issues. There is still a crucial piece of information missing that even the police is unable to determine the motive behind the high-profile murder. Now that Luigi Mangione has been caught, maybe in the coming days, we will get that answer. How many days in a week do you work? How many days in a week do you think you should be working? What if you worked 4 days? Well, Tokyo government is planning to turn to a 4-day work week in a few months from now. Why? In a way, it wants people to work less and make more babies. According to reports, the move is a desperate attempt to address Japan's record low fertility rates, also a bid to support young families. Let's break it down for you. The plans were announced recently by the Tokyo metropolitan government, which is notably one of Japan's largest employers. Tokyo Governor Yuriko Koike, in a recent policy speech, unveiled the initiative, which is set to begin in April next year. Koike said that the staff of the metropolitan government will be able to take 3 days off every week. What's more, a new childcare partial leave policy will also allow some employees to work 2 hours less per day. Koike also added that the government will ensure that no one has to give up their career due to life events, including childbirth and childcare. And through this, especially emphasizing on creating more work-life flexibility options for women who are majorly in charge of childcare to prevent them from opting out of work. But how will this policy help exactly? Well, the goal of the new policy broadly is to help employees who are either parents already or are planning for parenthood to be able to balance childcare with work. And what's more, in an additional policy, Koike announced allowing parents with children in elementary schools to trade off a bit of their salaries for the option to clock out early and spend quality time with their children and family. You see, Japan has been facing an acute population crisis as it continues to grapple with declining birth rates and a rapidly aging population, which reportedly has serious implications for the country's economy and national security. According to the Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare, Japan's fertility rate dropped to just 1.2 children per woman last year, which is far below the 2.1 needed to maintain population stability. And this, by the way, is despite various government initiatives to encourage young couples to have children. As per experts, Japan has a demanding work culture characterized by long hours, which may discourage many women from pursuing both careers and families. In fact, data from the World Bank last year showed a significant gender gap in workforce participation. The question remains, can Tokyo's new policy actually make people have more babies and address the serious issue of declining birth rates? A stark reality has come to light, a story of drying lands and the escalating threats to humanity. According to a report released at the UN Conference on Desertification in Riyadh, over 77% of our planet's land has become permanently drier in just 3 decades, up to 2020. In fact, scientists are warning that over 4.3 million square kilometers of humid landscapes have transitioned into dry lands. These dry lands, where rainfall falls short of the atmospheric demand, now making up 40.6% of the Earth's land area and expands bigger than India. Not just that, the report also reveals a grim future. If greenhouse gas emissions are not curbed, another 3% of humid areas could turn to dry lands by the end of the century. For 2.3 billion people living in these regions, including over 1 billion in Asia, this basically means more struggle to survive, less water, dwindling crops, shrinking livelihoods. By 2100, this number could rise to 5 billion. And as aridity takes hold, GDP losses are already evident. Africa, in fact, lost 12% of its GDP between 1990 and 2015 due to drying conditions, while Asia witnessed a 2.7% drop. And it's not just economies. Wildfires, species extinction, desertification, deadly sandstorms are expected to only intensify. At least 55% of species in some regions are at the risk of losing their habitats. The UN report labels aridity as a global existential peril, a challenge no longer shrouded in scientific uncertainty. It is very much here, and it is transforming lives on our planet like never before. Shifting focus, Donald Trump's victory has prompted speculation that he may try to curtail the Federal Reserve's autonomy. This is basically due to his tumultuous past with the Fed chair, Jeremy Powell, on interest rate moves. Take a look at our next report as we delve into what a president can and cannot do to the Fed.
Trump has sent mixed messages on what he wants to do with the Federal Reserve. While he maintained the president should not have the authority to direct the Fed, he did indicate the president should have a say on interest rate policy. Although Trump had considered removing Fed Chair Jerome Powell from his position, in 2018, he ultimately decided to let him finish out his term, but Trump had said he would not reappoint him. On November 7th, Powell said he would not step down even if Trump asks him to. Appointing new members to the Fed board is the president's primary means of exerting direct influence on the central bank. A Fed chair serves 4-year terms, whereas governors serve 14-year terms. Usually, U.S. presidents tend to reappoint their predecessor's Fed chair. However, Trump is the exception in recent decades. In 2026, Trump will have the chance to appoint a new head of the Fed when Powell's tenure as chair ends. Trump will have one more opportunity to choose a Fed board member in 2028 when Powell's 14-year tenure as governor concludes. After Adriana Kugler's tenure as Fed governor ends in January 2026, there will be another chance. However, those roles only account for a fraction of the Fed. The presidents of the 12 regional Fed banks and 7 governors make up the Fed's 19 policymakers. It is the Fed directors that chose the 12 regional presidents. Also, the Senate must confirm the president's nominees for Fed governor, chair, and vice chair posts. And this is to make sure of checks and balances. The Republican Party, which Trump led in 2017 to 2021, also controlled the Senate, similar to the latest election results on November 5th. However, several of Trump's Fed appointees were blocked by senators back during his first term. For a president, removing the Fed chair is a direct method of sending a message. The Federal Reserve Act states in Section 10 that chair and other members are subject to being removed for cause by the president. The term cause has always been understood by legal experts to refer to misconduct or misuse of authority. Since the law is not clear on cause, the question of whether a president can fire the Fed chair becomes tricky. During his campaign, Trump hinted that he would try to sway the Fed's policymaking process. The difficult legal process of extreme decisions makes the president's sway on the independent Fed a little tricky. This is Bureau Report. WION World is One.
In the UK, civil servants who feel excluded from Christmas party invitations due to discriminatory reasons can sue their employers. The Public and Commercial Services Union has advised its members to take action if they suspect any kind of discrimination based on age, gender, religion, ethnicity, or other protected characteristics like disability, gender reassignment, marriage, and civil partnership, pregnancy, and maternity. In previous cases, government tribunals have awarded substantial compensation to workers who were intentionally left out of Christmas party invitations. A notable example here is a pregnant woman who was deliberately excluded from a Christmas party after sharing the news of her pregnancy with her employers. She was awarded around $25,500 in compensation earlier this year. Another case involved a new mother who was not invited to last-minute Christmas drinks because allegedly she was on maternity leave. She received a payout of $11,482 in 2021. In the UK, the Worker Protection Act 2023 reinforces this responsibility, holding employers liable for failing to prevent harassment. Employers are obligated to prevent harassment and discrimination in all work-related settings, including social events like Christmas parties. It also demands employers take steps to guard their staff from sexual harassment from people they encounter as part of their job. This is especially relevant to hospitality. Employers whose staff encounter intoxicated revelers this Christmas. Under government plans, employers will be liable unless they can demonstrate that they took all reasonable steps to prevent the harassment. Google says it has cracked a key challenge in quantum computing. The tech giant has unveiled a new quantum chip it claims can transform computing by offering speeds far beyond traditional systems. Named Willow, Google says the new quantum chip can perform one standard test in under 5 minutes, one that would otherwise take one of today's fastest supercomputers 10 septillion years. That's more than the years the universe is believed to have existed for. In a blog post, Google said that even under ideal conditions, it would take a regular computer 1 billion years to get the same results as Willow. In fact, the Willow chip has 105 so-called qubits, the building blocks of quantum machines. They are super fast, but also very error-prone. In other words, qubits can become upset by something as tiny as a passing subatomic particle. Google says it has now found a way to make them more reliable, adding that the new chip can also correct errors in real time, marking a major step towards building a practical quantum computer. Meanwhile, tech billionaire Elon Musk took to the platform X, his social media platform, to praise Google's latest quantum computing breakthrough. Musk replied with the words "wow" on Google's post about Willow, to which Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, responded, quoting, "We should do a quantum cluster in space with Starship one day." The Willow chips are being developed and manufactured at a brand new Google facility in Santa Barbara in California. While rival firms have focused on building chips with more qubits, Google says improving reliability is the key to delivering a workable system. The year 2024 has been famously touted as the year of elections. More than half the world exercise their franchise in some of the biggest, most intense elections in the world. With the year coming to an end, Merriam-Webster Dictionary has released its word of the year. And it's safe to say that it summarizes how millions have received and reacted to the global political landscape changes. The word is polarization.
And so the word of the year for 2024 from Merriam-Webster is polarization. And obviously this year was a year with an important election. The elections were clearly the story of the year. And polarization is the term that has been used by everyone.
From the US presidential race to elections in European countries and South Asian countries, including the world's biggest democracy, India, political analysts and citizens across countries have witnessed an extreme spectrum of response to the voting process, whether it is ideological differences or party allegiances. The election year for several countries has witnessed a divide in society, not just during elections, but even after electoral outcomes.